Is this in the lens?
Yep, you don't want to advertise Kirkland Water.
Oh, I don't care. I just didn't want to mess up your production.
Oh no, you're okay. You're plenty good. Okay. Just want to make sure we're live here. It says we're live. We'll make sure we are on Facebook though. Yep, we are live. Perfect. Welcome back to part 2 with the original William Waits. So, Grandpa, I'm going to kind of go through a summary of our last discussion, and we'll kind of pick up there. We attempted to go somewhat chronologically through kind of your life story, starting with where you're born, your family, and ending right around 1979, 1980, when you ended up in Moses Lake after your time in the Air Force.
Okay. Following retirement then?
Yeah, well, yeah. So we can go beyond retirement, or I was thinking maybe go back and kind of fill in some of the gaps. One thing we didn't do, and I know that I got some feedback from some of your children. They'd like a little bit more details about them growing up and them, as part of the story, as well as some of your pit stops along the way in the Air Force. So maybe we'll start with let's talk about the first place you were stationed in the Air Force.
Oh, first place was Lackland Air Force Base in San Antonio, Texas, where the basic training took place. I was there for 11 weeks, beginning in I think I enlisted on the 18th of October, somewhere about that time.
Mm-hmm.
I never thought I'd ever forget those few dates, but if you're not using them occasionally, it's pretty easy to get them set apart. Pretty sure it was 18 October 1954. This is the year I graduated from high school, and just a couple of months later enlisted in the Air Force. Basically because I had no idea what to do. The things that I thought I wanted to do were out of the questions. Number one, I had no idea how to go about getting it done, and number two, which is probably the greatest reason, is financial. We were pretty poor, and just a snatch and grab until you finally get onto something that you can survive on.
Mm-hmm.
And at that particular point, I wanted to fly, and again, a bit foolish thinking, oh, well, let's join the Air Force. They'll teach me to fly. Doesn't work that way.
Mm-hmm.
First thing you got to have to do, and I don't remember exactly when it occurred that it was a requirement, but has been for most of my career. You could even get a commission unless you had a degree, and by that time I just didn't feel like I was in a position to go get a degree. Only to find out later, had I done a certain amount of that and gotten some evidence that I was serious, they eventually came out with a program where I could actually have left active duty and attended college full time.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't realize it until we were well on down the road. Anyhow, well, that part of it is history, and you can't go back and do it. You don't get any redos.
Not many redos.
Okay, so where do we want to go from there?
So you were at Lackland, and then what was your next stop with the Air Force?
Okay, from after basic training, I had 10 days leave time. They called it furloughs in those days for military people. It's just your paid leave time that you're using up. And I went home to see Mom. Mom had already been quite sick, and we were in a foundry, just how sick she was, because she kept it. She had cancer, and it was already too far developed. But she did live for a couple of years past that. Well, I enlisted in 54, and she died in 56, summer of 56. So I was in less than 2 years when she passed on, and I got leave time to go home, and I was home for about 40 days because things didn't happen as fast as they had indicated they were or would. And then I went back to Sacramento McClellan Air Force Base. And actually, that's where I wound up after tech training. After my 11 weeks of boot camp, I went to Keesler Air Force Base, Mississippi, for career training in aircraft control and warning systems. And that was my career field for the entire 24 years I was in service. I was still in that, although some additional stuff happened in the process as time went on. They automated the system, and for people who may be seeing or hearing this, the system became known as SAGE, Semi-Automatic Ground Environment System. And all that means it was an automated system, and you sat behind a digital presentation where the radar inputs from around all your area became databated and were controlled by computer systems instead of all manual, where you had to literally talk to your fighter and when it involved fighters. Basically, what the system did was keep surveillance of a given block of airspace that you had responsibility for, and you had to know where every aircraft was, and who it was, and what was its reason for being in the airspace. At times it got really, really busy. Other times you sort of sit and scratch your nose or your eyes and whatever to stay alert because you had to. That was the source of the surveillance, was what the operators were calling from their displays. And I don't see any sense in going through those details, but generally what it is you have different sections. In this case, a movement section. So when an operator presented to the system a blip from the radar, then another section had maintained the flight plans and so forth on who that had to be, and it's all, time sensitive and so forth. And so if that blip matched the data that you had available on it, then no problem. You just went on your way, and he had no particular problems with his labor. However, if he didn't meet the time, distance, altitude criteria, then where the fighters came in. Depending on where you were and the critical nature of the area that you were responsible for surveilling, if you couldn't decide from the data you had or get communication with them, and you never did under those circumstances, you didn't know who it was. Mm-hmm. No reason to say, okay, so-and-so and so, here, come up and tell me who you are. That didn't happen. So what did happen, we were part of their defense command and had available to us when necessary, 5-minute alert aircraft. Scrum them and go see.
Mm-hmm.
And they did. You get usually 2 fighter-type aircraft in the air, quick ones, and they would literally intercept it and get his tail numbers and whatever the livery of the aircraft was, and identify him that way. And then he's behind the 8 ball because he has some explaining to do why he wasn't meeting his criteria.
Mm-hmm.
But that's basically what we did. Locate them, present them, determine who they are, and most of the time you had no more reason to, you just tracked them.
Right.
And as they completed your area, why they would either land someplace there, particularly if it turned out to be a civilian aircraft. They're not, they don't have any tactical assignments to carry out. But that's what we were guarding against. Those radar sites are always located, well, that's not totally true. Usually, almost always are located in remote areas on mountaintops where you can get the max benefit of the energy from your radar system to locate and carry out your duties on everything that was moving in your area. Now, granted, there were some areas that if you got a blip in there, it was no big deal because there was nothing there in that area they could hurt. So as long as they stayed in that area, then you don't have to really pay any attention to them. But you suddenly get a blip wandering out of the area, then he's fair game again, and you have to go see, have to know who he is. But that's pretty much what we did, and I did that for 24 years.
Wow. Now, did you ever have any anomalous instances where they intercepted an aircraft, they didn't know what was going on or it was there on your radar and then they couldn't find it?
You mean the crew flying the aircraft itself was unaware? Is that what you're asking?
Well, so you're seeing it on radar,
yeah.
and then you send intercept out there and they can't find it, or what they find is not what they're expecting to find in the air. UFO or AFB.
We never had any of the UFO. We always found out and determined who it was. And very often we had information on him, but he was not where his flight information said he would be. And, of course, the program can become quite varied. Sometimes, and you use all the data information that you can assimilate to decide what you're going to do or just ignore it. You know, for instance, if he's only doing 120 knots, it's got to be a Piper Cub or something similar, you know. So in that case, you may not have to scramble because nothing is going to be going that slow if they are capable of flying at 450, 500 knots, what have you, in order to be a hazard or a danger. But occasionally you'd be surprised. It usually was a civilian or commercial object that you were looking at, but there's no way to tell just from the radar display because they don't carry an automated tag with that blip saying, hey, I'm Pan American 454 or something similar, whatever. That was our job. If you had a flight plan, is it this guy or is it something else? And that was the criticality of it. Fortunately, in the States, the contiguous 48, now 50, excuse me, it turned out to be nothing unusual or something that, for a number of reasons, they may have become confused and didn't really know where they were.
Mm-hmm.
And so you find out, and as soon as they see those blinking lights off their wingtips, they know they're in trouble. But they also know they're going to find out where they are,
Right.
not where they thought they were. But yeah, it was interesting at times because correlated with your normal real life air traffic, we often had simultaneously missions that were designed to test the system, to see how it worked.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, there's a lot of special stuff goes on with that so that they don't get tagged with not being who we thought they were. But that's no real interest now. You either know or you go find out. And then whatever happens is between the government and individuals who messed up, or maybe we messed up and misidentified or didn't identify.
Mm-hmm.
So it can get hairy because it's dangerous. You know, if you have somebody tooling around out there, you don't know who he is. He's not where you expect him to be. How can I be sure he's not endangering other traffic, air traffic?
Right.
So that was the purpose of it. North American Air Defense Command, NORAD, was the agency nationwide that does this. And within NORAD, you have others like Air Defense Command and Fighter Squadron, so forth, that are all part of it. Not always used, because they're doing something else too.
Mm-hmm.
But as unbrief as my tale runs, that's what we did. You see a blip, you either know who it is or you find out. That was our job.
Gotcha. So that training, how much of that do you do with the Air Force translates over into like civilian air traffic?
Oh, interesting. Actually, what we were doing is very similar to what you may know. Do you know anybody that works in a control tower at the airport out here?
Not now, but growing up, I had friends who had parents or fathers that worked as air traffic control.
Okay, that's the civilian side of it, and how it works is very similar to what we had to do,
Mm-hmm.
except I'm not sure how I could state this. Their setup and their training and preparation for that job is different than what ours was. Our job was to make sure that aircraft are separated.
Mm-hmm.
Their job is to make sure that they are together and where they are supposed to be.
Coming in and going out.
Generally, in the civilian world, passenger traffic, they are flying a specified route, and they're all tagged and named, but we didn't have that. We had, if they showed up in a certain place, we had to find out who it was.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, we did do that with much of the commercial traffic, especially stuff coming in from another country or from Hawaii, or on the other side was coming up from Cuba. That one is really close.
Mm-hmm.
And those guys worked their fanny off to know everything a blip shows. They got to have it right now.
Right.
But generally, all the commercial international traffic was never a problem.
Right.
Because their system of control and where they were was a bit different than there was a civilian operation, just as important, of course, but it's all supported from different sources. But they do work together
Mm-hmm.
quite a bit.
Did you ever, when you retired from the Air Force, did you ever consider going to the civilian side of air traffic control?
Yeah, I thought about it, but there again, it's pretty much like a doctor, you know, as far as how you get into it. For instance, a doctor can start from a number of places. Many of them start in some area of the medical field, and then perhaps at some point is, oh, I want to be a doctor. I want to be the guy calling these shots. And so then that involves reschooling or more schooling. Whereas ours was not so much redoing as here's what you do. And when you become good at it, you don't just toss it, or you're in no position to toss it, because number one, you're military. You do what you're told. And for instance, if you're working in aircraft control as mine was, it was even so varied because there were commissioned areas of it. Controllers, for instance, were all commissioned people, with a rare exception. But interestingly enough, a couple of places that I was assigned, we would have civilian controllers come in and have a stretch of time, and I have no idea what determined when they would do that. But when I was one station, I was in Texas, we'd have the civilian counterparts come in every night. One of them would come, and we had an allocated place for him to work from where he could watch and see his traffic, as they call it. And then you never knew exactly when he might be there, nor how long he would be there. But it was fun to work with him because, well, the civilian world, I won't go there. That serves no problem, no purpose, and it could cause some heartache and grief for some folks. But yeah, I thought about the possibility, but I'd also decided to settle in Moses Lake, and the civilian side of the picture, where they're working not totally but mostly with commercial operations, it's so different because the people who work there are civilians and they live there. And so once they get into the system, they have some opportunities for reassignment, but it all depends on what their entire structure wants or needs. But once you're assigned to, say, work in Pasco or Moses Lake or whatever, if that's where you want to live, chances are pretty good you can have an entire career at that one station.
Mm-hmm.
And so life is pretty much normal that way. You become a resident of the community and raise your family and go to school and play ball and all that stuff, that goes with the civilian side of life. But there are those areas where somebody in this case where I was involved in it, there are many assignments that are socially are not overly desirable because too many of them you can't have your family. There are no facilities for having your family there. And so consequently, a lot of people who initially may be in the aircraft control and warning field are always looking for something better. And it comes and goes. I had an opportunity where the controlling interests of the Air Defense Command wanted to have people from what I called, or what I was, the operational side. They wanted people that had aptitudes in automated systems, for instance. And they'd send you off to computer systems school, and you become not a controller, but people who maintain the automated systems, the computerized systems. And I actually was that for a while. But you always have this other one hanging out there that nobody wants to do, and when they run short on, they're trying to keep the undesirable assignments to a minimum. And by doing that, you're always on a list. And if you get an assignment to an undesirable one, I'm overusing that term, but that's what it is. And you say, well, no, I know Bill. He hasn't been. I've been since he did. I'm not going to take this one. You can go get him. There's one that I know. And so that's part of the reason that it can be undesirable, because if you got a family going, for instance, you get uprooted. They have to change schools. Or if the assignment is such that the family cannot accompany you, then they may have to move if they're living, for instance, in base housing or something. And the military member is gone, so they can no longer stay there. They have to find someplace else to live. That way they might be able or choose to stay where they are in that locality, so the kids don't have to change schools and what have you. It's all part of the pot, You know, when you're in that career field, that's a possibility. And you either work, try to find a way into something else. Discharge is always an option. But when you got 15, 16 years in a job, you don't just toss it and lose all your retirement opportunity. Well, that's the long, drawn-out version of it.
So my dad was curious to know more about that program, the computer automated systems that you were trained in. He was curious to know more about that. Like, what was it like? I mean, going in 1954, I can only imagine what kind of technology there was when you first came into the Air Force. And then, what were computers like when you were trained on them, and to what extent were you trained on the computers? Like, were you actually learning how they worked and what the pieces and parts were, or was it just simply the functionality of the computers?
Yeah, good question. Both.
Yeah.
You learn, for instance, and I don't want to get into a bunch of tags, but you have gear scattered around the country. Now, I'm speaking totally of the automated systems now, the computerized systems. In order to work in that field, you have to you have, in this case, you have to be both. You're actually a computer programmer and or a systems analyst, which those assignments is totally computer work. You make sure that the areas of the system that have been automated are doing what they should be doing, or is it a computer problem, or is it the manual side of it, the equipment that's not working? So the training that I got involved all that. We had company reps that were assigned to us at each one of these stations that had become automated. And they taught you all of the computer system side of it. What's input, what's output, where is it located, how do you get it, and which sometimes reaches out into other fields. For instance, telco or telephone company. All this data at some point is on telephone lines. And so there's a different group of people that maintain that system with totally different training. I mean, they could care less, as far as their job is concerned, what my problems were, except where they tied together. Then they're interested in it, and they have to know that. Part of the system is almost automatic, except that it has to be maintained. But we had what you call gap fillers, a somewhat minimized radar system, and all areas of this job, anytime that you're controlling aircraft, for instance, on data that is coming from ground sources, there are always tall buildings, for instance, or hills, or in that case it's geographic problem, where the major system is blocked. It blocks your energy. For instance, you have a mountain out here, and aircraft is coming behind that mountain. Then how do you do that? Well, one way you do it is with a gap filler. You put a smaller system behind the mountain. It can see it, and then you can take that data, put it on phone lines, and shove it into the entire system. That covers the general concept of how we did that. When you were there in Moses Lake, I don't know if you ever wondered what that huge concrete building near the air terminal.
The Titan building?
Yeah. That was part of what that building housed the equipment of the SAGE system, the semi-automatic ground system, which was the automated system. The little unit down at Othello on top of the hill was just the radar equipment. It provided area coverage as well as altitude coverage for a moving target.
I've always wondered, why was Radar Hill chosen for that? Is it the highest point altitude? Really? So that is the highest point in that area?
In that area, yeah.
I didn't realize that. It makes sense.
Yeah, I could walk outside when I was stationed down there, and I could see all kinds of the territorial objects over near the coast.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Oh, so it's both ways. So it's not just, it's Eastern Washington, and you can see all the way west.
Right.
Wow, okay.
Yeah, we didn't care about that. This is our area responsibility. Make sure that you got coverage there. But, yeah, we had a few gap fillers around, and usually there's no personnel at those. I mean, they're restricted areas and protected as such. But when it's running, they don't need to have anybody there because the system itself is putting it on the phone lines. It takes the data that its system gathers, puts it on the phone lines, and pipes it into that big building out there. So you might have them over in Montana and behind the mountain down in Oregon and the areas around Seattle into Canada. You could have them all there, and then they're feeding the main system, and then the controllers who are responsible for tactically covering it would be located in that building. Now, I was not working in the semi-automatic system as an operator or a controller. My job there was at Radar Hill, making sure that all of that stuff was doing what it was supposed to be.
So you were essentially like the central office, essentially, for
Yeah,
the radar system.
central, but because it was only that one, and Othello, when we moved here, Othello did not have housing sufficient to fill all the needs of having families there. That's why we lived in Moses Lake, because that air base had recently closed, but all that housing was available, and through some legal means had been given access to some of the community organizations. And that provided housing for people like my job, as well as people who had been reassigned to a combat zone, Korea, or later Vietnam and all that. And so there was another organization that had the housing. It eventually became available for purchase for those people who chose to stay there for whatever reason. And we actually lived in that house for 40 years. That's a pretty good stretch.
Yeah. Yeah. So that house, so for 40 years, that's when you came back in 1980. Is that about right? 79, 79, 80?
Let's see. We came here from after our tour in Iceland because we had already been stationed here and decided this is where we wanted to settle when I did retire. And so I actually put in for retirement while I was in Iceland and was granted permission to be stationed at Fairchild, Spokane, because you can do that. But you have to be out within a certain amount of time. So it didn't matter whether they had your job requirement there or not. You're not there to do the job. You're there to be retired.
Gotcha.
And so we knew we were going to settle in Moses Lake, so we went about arranging housing, moved the family in. I went to Fairchild for about 2 months. I had that much leave time accrued. So I didn't really have a job while I was there. I was technically assigned to Micah Peak out south of Spokane. Just paperwork. I went there, knew where it was, we went, and you're just monitoring the equipment there is all you're doing.
Right.
Make sure it's functioning properly. And when my time was up, we'd already established a retirement date. And so when my leave kicked in, I said, sayonara, folks, nice knowing you, and came home.
So Brian Jones commented, he's been watching, it looks like. He's asking if you knew a Don Mottaz that worked at Radar Hill, Mottaz.
It's possible, but I don't recognize that name. That's how you pronounced it, Mottaz?
Oh, I don't know how to pronounce it. Mottaz, Mottaz, yeah.
I would call it Mottaz, but
Mottaz.
names are different. They can be whatever the owner decides them to be.
Right.
But no, I don't remember that name.
Anybody that you have stayed in touch with that you work out Radar Hill that you remember or stayed in the area?
No longer, because I've outlived them all, most of them. Offhand, I can't remember anybody that I was stationed with here that went back home, so to speak. And the majority of career people usually do go back somewhere near where they came from.
Right.
Not necessarily. You don't have to. You can go live where you want to.
Well, you did.
Yeah. That was sort of interesting, too. When I was reassigned from here, it was to Iceland. And Iceland was one of those stations I was assigned as a remote assignment, which means I couldn't have a family. However, when I got there, it turns out that it was possible to have your family, but there's a bunch of hoops you had to jump through in order to do that, and they could not come with you when you were assigned. It usually was anywhere from 2 or 3 or 4 months up to 6 months, because you have to, in the meantime, you have to go on the economy and locate housing from whoever owns it.
So there wasn't base housing there?
Well, they had base housing, but the newbies had to go through these hoops. You know, we had to live on the economy until I could work my way up the list and say, okay, I'm next. So when we get a base housing available, then I could move them in. But it was a good tour. It was a good tour. We enjoyed it. We made a few friends in the community that we no longer communicate with. The people that we knew, most of the people that we knew when we were living on the economy, were military people doing the same thing I was doing, you know, just waiting for base housing to come available. Those types of situations can get not too friendly, because people are people. And the Icelandic government official stance was we would just as soon not have you here, because we know you're not permanent. And so some of the citizenry adapted an attitude, perhaps not many. It was never a problem with us. If you run into that, you just learn to deal with it, and you be friends, and take it from there. I had a little bit of a mechanical aptitude, and you could make a friend real quick if someone didn't have that. And oddly enough, they have lawns there in Iceland. And one of them came to me one day and said, "Can you fix my lawnmower?" I said, "Well, I don't know. Just bring it over here. Let's see what we can do." And man, after that, he was always bringing me fresh scampi. Scampi is very good shrimp. And yeah, so it works. You just got to work with it. And we enjoyed them. We had one friend, but he was from Reykjavik, which was about 30 miles down the road, Icelandic. And he died shortly after we left there. But he knew, and I don't know how he knew, because we didn't write much. But one day, I got a check in the mail. This man worked hard. He was a fisherman. got a check in the mail. And says, well, thought you might be having a hard time, so thought we'd send this to you. I don't need it. And that's the way it was. If they liked you or if you made friends with them, they're friends forever.
Mm-hmm.
But if you messed it up and didn't do too well with it, they would just ignore you, look right through you. You didn't exist as far as they were. And I don't imagine that's too different wherever you happen to be abroad.
Mm-hmm.
It probably is pretty normal. We enjoyed our tour up there. The first tour I was pretty sour because I'd worked hard to become good at the automated side of things.
Mm-hmm.
And then I just felt like the Air Force doesn't care. They just sent me right back into that old operational mode.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, what a waste. But I got over it eventually, and then I was reassigned. I came back, was assigned to a place in Illinois. For one whole year, I was right back to the same organization in Iceland. I said, well, I can't win this one, so we may as well enjoy it.
Mm-hmm. So was Webb born in the first tour in Iceland? And you guys came back to Illinois, and then he went back. Now, Webb being born in Iceland, you mentioned them not necessarily being friendly to the military people, but Webb was or had at one point dual citizenship.
Still does.
Still does.
Unless you kill it yourself.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's Icelandic American.
There's some minority status in there somewhere, I think, right?
Pardon?
There's some minority status in there somewhere, right?
Probably. I don't know.
Whether it's worth anything or not is probably the bigger question.
They were a little different neighbors than you might be accustomed to in military and the civilian community. But once they accepted you, you got one forever.
Mm-hmm.
There's nothing false about it. I mean, you either know you are or know you're not.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this times Webb brings that up. Yeah, he could go right back now, take his birth certificate, which is all in Icelandic.
Mm-hmm. So when I started lifting weights, and a little bit more seriously a few years ago, and the strongman competitions came up, and I've learned that there's these stones in Iceland.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
There's the full stroker and the half stroker, I think. If you can lift the full stroker, you could lift the full. You were a full man. You could do a full man's day's labor. If you could only do the half stroker, which is a smaller stone, you only could do a half man's labor. So you weren't quite a full man. But there's these stones all over Europe that they use for testing strength, and I kind of would think it'd be fun to go back to Iceland and find those stones. And
It would. I never pursued it to that point where I actually saw them, but it's a measurement in their system of life. It's that's 40 stones, or I don't remember how much a stone is equal to.
mm-hmm.
But yeah, they still use it. It's a part of their culture, and they are proud people. They're Vikings,
Mm-hmm.
and a couple of my service members that we knew up there as missionaries. Gary Buckway lives in the area of south of Salt Lake there that they had sent a senior couple up, and he was the branch president in Keflavik. And he was also a real Icelander. His grandparents came some years ago.
Oh yeah, so they came to Utah from Iceland.
Yeah.
They converted to the church and came to Utah.
Well, yeah, and they're all gone now, but a couple of the missionaries that were there then we still know. Don't see them anymore. They had twin sons that came from a Far Eastern mission, one from Japan and one from Korea, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And they were on missions to those countries simultaneously. And just as they came back, their parents were being sent up as leadership. And so they said, well, Elder Monson, I think, was talking to him, says, would you like to serve another mission with your parents? Oh, sure. And they did.
That was the Gieselsons, correct?
Yeah.
Wow. So back-to-back missions.
Yeah, one of them has passed on. One of the twins has gone on, had some brain problems and didn't survive. The other one is still there. Outstanding people.
Mm-hmm.
But life goes on.
It does. Now, I was able to actually meet Forsetti.
Oh, did you?
President Gieselson. Just remember, so we went on, you and I went on a road trip.
Oh, yeah, when we drug the float down.
Yeah, we drove that float. So I can't, was it the second ward that did that? What was that for? I don't even remember why we did it. I just know we did do it.
It was actually the stake.
Was it for the stake?
Yeah, but...
and was it for the sesquicentennial? 150 year? Or 174?
Yeah,
Sesquicentennial will be 175 year.
I can't remember the details now, but yeah, I forgot about that. Oh, that was a great trip.
Yeah, we drove down, stopped in Boise,
Yeah,
met with the Ibsens.
yeah. Drug it down, and drug it back.
Yeah, got down to to Salt Lake and met with the Gieselsons.
Yeah.
Now, we didn't have to bring it back. We just had to take it down.
That's what I was thinking. I don't think we did.
I think we took it down and then they took it apart down there and
Yeah.
somebody else
Yeah.
brought it back.
Yeah. That was a fun trip.
It was an experience.
And I called your web all the way down.
You did. You did. That was fine. I knew who you were talking to. There was only me in the car, so I couldn't get confused.
we knew.
Yeah. I remember you had someone down in Las Vegas, I think, that you wanted to go see, and I asked how much further it was. I think it was like 8 hours from where we were at, and I was like, "Can we not go to Las Vegas?"
Not after dragging that trailer all that far.
I don't think either one of us were really looking forward to that part of the trip.
That would have been pretty much the same trip again,
Yeah.
because it was. Well, I don't remember exactly what it took, because we're driving or pulling that trailer and we couldn't go very fast. I was afraid, I'd mess the whole darn thing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was having some fuel pump problems with the pickup. I eventually found out, and it just didn't want to go up those hills.
Mm-hmm.
We were just dragging tail. But then we were all the way back here before I finally figured out what it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't. One of the mechanics did. I bet you got bad for fuel pump. I said, yeah, sure did.
That's the best time to find out you have a problem with your car is when you're on a road trip, right?
Yeah, put it out on the road. Chances are pretty good you're going to find out it's not okay.
But I remember that was a good trip.
It was. I think of it often still. Do you remember Gary Buckway?
I do. And Gary came up with. I think we met him down there. He came to the Gieselsons.
Yeah.
I think he told us a UFO story while we were down there one time. But he came up. He's visited up here a couple times too.
Yeah. It's been a while now. His wife has been sort of sick, and so I don't think he gets too far from the front door anymore. But yeah, he is a real good friend. We became good friends partially because we were the same size.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. If he needed a piece of clothing or something, no, we'll go see what you got in the closet.
Well, that works too.
Yeah. I mean, that was odd. Who'd ever thunk it, huh?
Mm-hmm.
Good people.
So when my dad was born in 1962, so you've been in since '54. So we're 8 years in. Well, let's see. When did you marry Grandma?
57.
A little bit after
Yeah,
your mom passed.
16 November 57. Yeah, that's
so-
when we married.
So Grandma had never met your mom.
No,
Oh.
no, they hadn't.
Then you met Grandma, and you were in the Air Force. What was she doing?
She was working for State Farm, I think, insurance agency in Berkeley, which is right. You know, all those towns down there, or you never know when you leave one and
you
into
roll around
another
it.
one.
So she was in California
Yeah.
when you met her, but she grew up in Iowa.
Yeah, partly. They actually moved to California twice. Her dad was a farmer back in Iowa, and for a lot of people, you never get farming out of your system.
Mm-hmm.
And he was in the service and had some physical problems, and I don't think he really got over. I never met her father.
Mm-hmm.
When I met Mary, he had died recently, and her brother Stan was in the Air Force at the time also, and he was home during the Christmas holidays, I believe it was, when he died and all that stuff. And so one of my roommates had a sister living down there in Mill Valley, which is on the west side, across the Golden Gate from San Francisco here, Oakland, across Bay, and all very much like you never know down there where one starts and the other ends. And so we were down there, and it was during the holiday. I think it was New Year's. And have a party. Everybody parties on New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
I was not a teetotaler then, but not much of a partier. Just never saw the future in it, really. But yeah, that one turned into something real good. Better there. Just kept working at it.
Yeah. So you didn't sweep her off her feet the first night. You had to convince her.
No, you'll never know. Women have a way of keeping their secrets and telling what they want to tell.
Mm-hmm.
But I respected her. I've never disrespected anybody. I just feel like if they're worth your time to date or to see again, then treat them like it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it was. Eventually, the one I thought was the only one dumped me on without any excuse. So I had nothing to brag about there or to be sorry about. That's the way life is.
Mm-hmm.
And we were schoolmates or all the time from junior high on through. We had two different schools. That was the first time I ever knew there was a difference in what was a junior high. And it was just, well, the way it worked there, it was 7th and 8th grade, and eventually became 6, 7, 8, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. But anyhow, that was high school time.
So you had a high school sweetheart, and she broke your heart.
Yeah.
Well, been there, done that.
Matter of fact, I knew Mary when it all happened, and she knew. I told her, I says, hey, don't get serious. Not that I'm anything worth, pursuing, but don't get serious. I got gal picked out already. Foolish.
Yeah.
But she was a nice gal. had a nice family, nice parents. She was an only child, so that might have presented some problems. Single children often do have difficulties because they don't have the opportunity of sibling rivalries and sibling associations. Doesn't mean they're not good people. It's just an experience that they didn't have. No hard feelings. She just says, well, I don't remember exactly what she said, to tell you the truth. Pretty sure she sent me a letter. And I do remember I did not bother to respond. I said, well, that's your decision. That's your decision. So, it's not a big issue. I mean, I thought it was at the time, of course, but it was never a problem. No issues with anybody about it. And I honestly don't know. She died 30 years ago.
Yeah.
So, and have no reason why. I was home on from here, and my older brother told me, "You know, Carolyn died." I said, "No, I haven't talked to her since I was in service way back then. That was my first tour, and she broke it off, and that was that." But wonder about it every once in a while. I hope she was happy, but beyond that, I have no idea who she married or what kind of marriage it was. Don't know if she even had children.
Yeah.
Just no communication. Hey, it's over. It's over.
Right. Yeah. Oh, so then you met Grandma at a holiday party and began to court her.
Yeah.
Sounds like it wasn't a serious courtship at first, or did it have its ups and downs, or what was the process?
Well, there's no way you can ask her, but that'd be the only way you'd get the right answer or the straight answer.
Well, from her perspective, but
That's what I mean.
what was your perspective?
She was fun to be with.
Yeah.
And it was someplace to go to get away from the military life for a couple of days. We slept at her roomie's sister's home. She was married, but they did not have any children, and they lived out in Mill Valley, and they just assumed that Melvin and I would probably be down there every week or every other week or whenever. But I don't think their marriage lasted, which I was sad to hear that. Because they were good people, too. Her husband was a little bit not-headed, but aren't we all?
Pretty much. So you courted Grandma, convinced her to marry you.
Yep.
And tag along.
Yep.
So she stayed. Did she stay in California for your next assignment, or did she come along with you?
Yeah, when I went, because there was no way you could take your family. You just had to go, sign in and be a part of it, and get your name on the list for housing and all that stuff. So she stayed with her aunt in Alameda, which was very close to where she was living. Alameda is, I always told them that I put the Navy to rest because they have a big Navy base there. And I think she knew a young man from where they grew up there in Iowa. But I don't know. I never got too much in it. I didn't know him, and so what? I got the gal.
Right.
But yeah, if she'd lived 2 more months, would have been 66 years.
Wow. How many tours did you have to do without your family? They had to leave them behind.
I did one in Newfoundland. That was a full year because there was no housing there. The only way you could get housing there is if you met one of the local gals and married them.
Mm.
And I already had the gal. So,
You weren't looking to
so
add
that
to the
was that
collection?
was not an option,
Yeah. You weren't Mormon yet,
But,
so you couldn't have more than one.
right? I think the two tours to Iceland and that one to Newfoundland, I think that was the only ones I had to serve without them.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the ones in Iceland were a matter of months, and the one to Newfoundland was for the entire year. It was a remote tour, and no option to take your family. Just it was just a little fishing village.
Mm-hmm.
Met some nice people though.
Yeah.
One of them was on my crew, and he did marry a girl from there.
He figured the secret out.
And so got some free meals out of that. But people that live in those situations, fishermen mostly are fish, and the sea is basic to their economy.
Mm-hmm.
And they know 1,000 ways to fix a piece of fish. And I love fish anyway.
Yeah.
So then they have scampi. Scampi is a real fancy shrimp. That's all it is. Well, maybe that's just their name for shrimp. I don't know. But they do seem to be a little bit larger than what we managed to get here. Very tasty. But all experiences.
Yeah. So I imagine, so this is primarily during the Cold War and probably the most active part of the Cold War while you were doing this. And you were, in effect on watch constantly for any kind of foreign invaders, foreign aircraft. What was the general feeling during that time? Did you feel like you were on high alert, or did the edge kind of come off a little bit? What was it like for you in the service, and then do you know what it was like for maybe your family at home that was kind of going through the same thing?
That was part. That one was hard. The year in Newfoundland. Fortunately, I could talk to them occasionally if I was working mids. The tactical lines were not used for anything except during battle or battle practice. So during the night, the only people that had access to them was the crew on duty. And by then, I was crew chief, so I used to tell the controller, "Hey, I'm going upstairs for a while." And one of those situations, the officers are all very junior. Many of them are just brand new second lieutenants, brass bars we call them.
Mm-hmm.
Second lieutenant wears a gold bar, insignia rank. It was no problem. They're all of them were pretty good people. They understood the situation, and they never told us we could not use them, the lines.
Mm-hmm.
They just said, "Hey, you're subject to get knocked off without any notice." I said, "I'll take the chance," because they were a lot better than trying to make a phone call.
Well, back then it was long distance and you were paying for every minute, right?
Yeah.
So on the tack lines, you didn't have to pay.
No, they're paid for anyway.
Yeah.
Whether you use them or not, they're part of the contract with your host country in the United States. It worked. It was difficult. Anytime you're separated from family and that's your only contact, The only personal, real live contact is a phone call.
Mm-hmm.
And Bill was just a child. Vicky was there, and she was just a toddler. But I guess every time they got in the car to go somewhere, he said, "We're going to get Dad? Going to get Dad?" I don't know how many times she had to tell him no.
Wow.
That's hard. 'Cause, he was our first, and you get pretty close to those first ones.
Mm-hmm.
But reality is reality. It it worked out all right.
So you had Dad and you had Vicky. When did Angie come along? Where were you at?
Texas. Came back from Newfoundland. Was stationed in Sweetwater, Texas, a little tiny town about 40 miles west of Abilene.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about all that was there. It was a little town, but the only only family that we knew there has moved, and he lives over closer to Dallas, which is farther east.
Mm-hmm.
And I think he worked for a telephone company, but we weren't real close. We knew each other, and chatted and talked, but I don't think we ever had dinner together.
Mm-hmm.
Haven't heard from him in years. No. Tried to call him a time or two, and got him a time or two, but we never had a close personal connection, so he was congenial, but then said, "Okay, I gotta go, Will."
Mm-hmm.
Which is okay.
Yeah. So you were in Texas, and then after Texas?
Well, from Sweetwater, boy, I forgot all that stuff.
Well, Lori came next. Where were you at when she came along?
Here, she was born in Moses
So
Lake.
born Moses Lake.
Yeah.
And every time you were here, Moses Lake, you were out in Othello, right? You were on
Yeah.
radio.
Yeah, that was. It was only the one tour to Othello, the hill.
Oh, so you were only stationed in Moses Lake once. So you came to Moses Lake, and Laura was born here.
Mm-hmm.
Then you went to Iceland from here.
Yeah.
Then back to Illinois.
Yeah.
Back up to Iceland.
Back to Iceland and then retirement.
Yeah. See, and that's what I guess, so your options were go back to California, where Grandma was at, go to little Sweetwater, Texas, which wasn't much, end up in Illinois.
No, Sweetwater it wasn't much. That's a good description. Lots of locusts, crickets.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, lots, swarms of them.
And rattlesnakes, too. I remember you telling stories.
Oh,
about
yeah.
rattlesnakes.
But you had to go looking for them.
Yeah, they didn't come on up to your property.
Yeah, they didn't bother you.
So there wasn't much to go back to in Texas. And
Matter of fact,
Illinois was the place.
They had a rattlesnake roundup there.
Oh, yeah?
And boy, you talking about rattlers. They have all sizes. I just never found any interest in intentionally going out trying to find a rattlesnake. You could stumble on those easy enough.
Yeah.
But they were set up for it. It was an annual thing.
Well, they probably need to thin the herd down a little bit.
Oh yeah, yeah. And then the ones that were big enough to slaughter, they had meat companies that bought them and canned them and sold them.
Wow.
I never tried it.
No, I don't blame you.
They told me it tastes a lot like chicken, but doesn't everything?
Right. Well, and my answer to that's, well, why don't you just eat chicken if that's the case?
Yeah, right. If it tastes like chicken, just hey, let's fry some chicken.
So he went to Iceland, back to Illinois, back to Iceland, and then came back to Moses Lake. And he had your family here.
Well, we actually leaving town with that tour back to Iceland. And I turned to Mary. And, in fact, I know where we were. We're just going on the railroad trestle there before you cross the lake.
Mm-hmm.
What do you think? Well, let's just come back here to settle. She said, okay. Her mother lived in California with her aunt. And Stan, he may have already moved back to Illinois. He worked for a big tech company.
He was out at Fermilab. Was that where he was? He
Yeah,
basically his entire career out there at Fermilab, right?
yeah. He was the only guy that never finished college that Fermi hired. That's how smart he was. He's really, really smart. And he worked there until he retired.
Mm-hmm.
But that was an interesting research place. I've forgotten all the terms they use. I think there's one particle in the atom or a molecule. I mean, those things are so tiny I can't even imagine what they are. But they accelerate them around the
Hadron Collider.
yeah. And then they throw a plate up in front of them and smash them and play with all the parts. But it's interesting. I didn't understand most of what he was telling me.
Remember when we made that trip back east when we stopped in there and did the tour? He took us around.
Yeah.
Go I think the top, it was like 13 stories up, maybe more. Where you can actually go up and from the observation you could see just how big the Hadron Collider was.
It's huge. Yeah, that from a scientific point of view, is very interesting what they did there. But he was hired by the company when they were living in Berkeley.
Mm-hmm.
And then they got involved in that one back there, and they said, come on, go with us. I said, sure. It was a real good job for him.
Mm-hmm.
He made good money working for them.
Mm-hmm.
And his wife was Mary's best friend from about that tall. They were tiny children together.
Mm-hmm.
When Mary's family moved out to California and went to school together and all that stuff. She was a nice gal, too. Had a tough time with her family. It's not unusual.
Yeah.
It's far more usual than any of us need to be. It's tough, but you got to be determined to make it work.
Mm-hmm.
The way I grew up, I made a conscious decision that my children would never know that. And they didn't. And still don't.
Mm-hmm. So you basically were in, well, not basically, you were in Moses Lake throughout the 80s and the 90s. Did you ever?
We came here in '68, and the base out there had just closed recently.
Mm-hmm.
several years before, but there was still, some government functions going on. Yeah, 68, here not too long before I got the assignment to Iceland, and then to Illinois and back to Iceland and back to here, and that's it. I can't keep doing this.
Enough moving.
No, the kids are, it's hard to change schools when you're, particularly when you're in high school, because through those years you just form some real close friendships, and then you move to a strange city or town and start all over again, and well, it, in those teen years, that's not the easiest thing in the world to do.
Nope.
Gather enough friends to really say, yeah, these are my friends. And so we need to call this thing off and just sit still. Never look back.
Well, I want to look back for a second. I've spent the last, now 18 years working in the telecom industry. And, it was when I first broke into the telecom industry, it was wireless. Cell phones had become more and more prolific. And the iPhone was kind of the cutting edge technology when I first started. But I can't help but think about what you were doing with those radar stations and the information being passed over telephone lines. You were working with the first internet.
Yeah.
Did you, when you were doing that, working that, did you have any inkling of what it would eventually become and how it would be integrated into our life?
No idea.
No?
Because what we were doing really didn't relate to me. I mean, as you said, cell phones that was really just more an idea than of an industry. Now, it didn't take very long for it to become an industry. But my first cell phone was a brick. And, I mean, every time you pushed a button, the old cash register went ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. And so it took some getting used to. And I remember Lori and Andrew went on a trip, and I said, well, take the phone, Don't use it unless you really need to, because every time you push the button, and it was a bit spendy. But we were in on the ground floor, and I'm not as pleased with the iPhone as many people are, perhaps most. I am aware of its capabilities. I just am not good enough to take advantage of all those things, and I get frustrated with it sometimes. It just won't work. Turn it off, leave it off for 10 minutes or whatever, and then fire it back up, and usually it'll get going. But you know what? I heard a conversation between some business people one time, and one of the members in the conversation was pounding on cell phones. Well, the blankety-blank things, they don't work sometimes, and you got to turn them off. And I think it probably was, what's his name, Bill? The guy in the cell phone business.
In Microsoft, Bill Gates? Or?
Yeah, I think it was him. Well, I don't know. It didn't matter whether it was him or somebody else. One of them, anyway, said, how often do you get in your car and you drive for 24 hours without turning it off? And I said, well, no, nobody does that. You can't drive for 24 hours. Well, how often you turn your phone off? And that makes sense. When you turn it off, same way with the car. look at all the electronics in an automobile, but you don't drive them 24/7. You get them and go to town or go on a trip or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But before the day is over, you turn it off. You don't your phone.
Nope.
Plug it in so the battery gets charged again.
Right.
So why are we critical about the choppy service that a phone may be given? You're running it 24/7.
Mm-hmm.
You go to bed, you plug it in. Anyhow, that's just one of the little inequities of life.
Right. Well, that's something also that, I mean, just in my lifespan, the leaps and bounds of technology that I've witnessed, and to your point about how we just take it for granted so quickly.
Yeah.
What were some of the probably the most prolific milestones technologically throughout your life that you would say fundamentally changed how life was for you?
Oh, goodness. Definitely the internet and associated industries. Like I mentioned the gap fillers a while ago, that was really early. We didn't even talk about cell phones then,
Mm-hmm.
but we did know that we utilized the phone lines and the phone system in order to do what we were doing. But it didn't really dawn on us. What does that technically do with me?
Mm-hmm.
You just don't think about it. If something goes wrong, you call your tech people, say, "Hey, the gap filler A is not working," and somebody goes and fixes it. Not me. I don't even know where it is.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, and then it moved along. And I said the first one I had was a brick, and that's what we called them because they're about this long and this thick and that wide, and we just called them a brick.
So would you say before, when we talked about last time, the first house you had with electricity in it. So, I mean, that probably changed things for you. But would you say that from that point until, really the internet and cell phones, was life pretty much the same with just minor technological advances, or was there anything else in between that changed the way you lived?
I'd say not being involved in those additional possibilities in life. I don't recall that I spent a lot of time even thinking about it.
Mm-hmm.
I probably says, "Oh man, look what they did with the cell phone. You don't have to carry that brick around anymore,"
Mm-hmm.
or something of that nature. But still, I don't know how the darn thing works. I know how to make it do what I want, but that's just a matter of applying something that they've already done and made it available to the phone. I think the one thing that I am most aware of and most appreciative of is what it has done to automobiles.
Mm-hmm.
Now you have this nice screen sitting up there, and it keeps track of everything you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you don't even have to turn your head. You just look at the screen, says, oh, somebody just pulled behind me. And I'm not sure I trust it, but I don't have a car that has that in it anyway. My car is an old Buick,
Mm-hmm.
and it's 20 years old. But that is impressive to me because of what it does, and you don't have to really stare at it. Well, you can glance at it, but you're taking a chance. Take your eyes off the road. But what it does do is it remembers or retains, the functions that you've asked it to do.
Mm-hmm.
And you can turn the darn thing off, park it, and come back and turn it back on, and that's still there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that's pretty good. The actual traffic assistance for you, I think, is amazing because it'll tell you if somebody is coming up behind you or crossing you or coming towards you. All those things, and that's amazing to me that it can do that thing and you're still driving. But I'm not sure that's the question you really asked me. But that's the most apparent improvement to our lives, I think, because we use our automobiles so much that so far, just recently, that hasn't been that long that they've got that thing right there on the dashboard.
Right. Well, and now we're on the cusp of everything being self-driving.
And that's going to take, I'll never get used to that.
You don't think so?
I'll never, I can get used to it happening, but I don't think I will ever trust it to be foolproof. And so far, the ones that are out there that people are using is proving me right. There's a long way to go before that's going to be safe. Yeah. It'll work.
Well, how long do you think's long?
That's a trick question. Because so much is happening so fast.
Right.
But, and goodness sakes, I'm 89. I don't expect I'll even be driving much longer. But it wouldn't surprise me to have cars driving themselves safely within 5 years.
Yeah.
Maybe sooner. I mean, that's the speed of how things are happening now.
Right.
I don't think it'll be 5 years before I'll have to admit, so yeah, it's working fine. No. If you say, well, discuss with me why you think that is, I'm not capable of the technicalities involved in it. I just realize how fast stuff happens now.
Right.
And I mean, things that never even occurred to me to do that. But it's common. It's everyday stuff now.
Well, it's funny because the way that you described the gap fillers and the way that the telephone line, it that's what I see this technology hearkening back to.
Yeah.
I mean, that was cutting edge technology when it was implemented with you in the Air Force.
Yeah.
That's the same idea that they're using for the self-driving and for the technology we have out there. It's all it's all interconnected, and it's all communicating one-to-one. You know, they call it edge computing or edge communication, and that's what has made self-driving possible because this decision-making is instantaneous.
Okay. You want an even more up-to-date? Do you realize how long we have been flying airplanes that have been doing that since I was in? And I've been out since, when did I retire?
79?
Yeah, 79. Officially 1 January of 80. How long we've been flying airplanes that do that? That big old clumsy thing that I flew on. Captain Hawk one night says, okay, guys, don't be moving around. We're strictly instrument approach. And let that thing down and land it. Well, he's sitting there probably with his hands ready to grab the wheel. It descended, it stayed on course, and it touched down on the runway all by itself. Pulled the throttles back, reverse thrust. Now that's been a while.
Yeah.
And we're literally doing it on airplanes now. They fire up the engines, throw a few switches, back the thing out, and it taxis, lines up with the runway, and takes off. And they don't have to do a thing but sit there and monitor it. That's crazy.
It is.
It's just, but it's only restricted by what we won't do.
Mhm.
That fistful of gray matter up there is, yeah, we say it's just a computer. It's just a computer? You really think that's true? It's doing stuff we haven't even thought about doing with computers yet,
Right.
automatically.
Well, and we're touching now, getting to where we're talking about artificial intelligence is now becoming more prolific.
And that's scary.
Well, it's scary, but to your point, it doesn't even come close to what we can innately do with our mind.
But have you thought about this? Here's one for you. You're much closer to it than I am. How long do you think it will be before AI has the ability to program the computer that you may be using to totally ignore what you tell it to do and does what it decides to do?
I think we're really close to that. I don't think we're very far off from that.
Are you comfortable with that?
I'm not. I'm not because of, well, we've been talking about it. We've been on automated systems since the 50s.
Yep.
What happens when they get access to all those systems?
Not only that, what happens if it decides, I don't care what you tell me, Rob, I'm going to kill you?
Yeah, I don't know where we go with that. I don't know. And
How do we stop it?
well, I guess it depends on how it decides to kill us, right? How would it do it?
Does it matter?
I guess not. I mean, if it's got access to the grid, it'd be pretty quick. A lot of people would be dead really
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah. And that's an extreme. I'll give you that, or anybody who wants it. I'll give you that. But the little bit that I understand, and I have not even looked at AI or not intentionally used it, but there's another scary thought. You're using it and don't even know it.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's learning from you too.
Yeah.
It's learning from you, and you don't even know that it's learning
Right.
from you.
And so I think that, and I'm sure there are smarter people than I am that are thinking about that. How do we keep this from happening?
I think far fewer people are worried about keeping it from happening than are trying to keep going forward.
Mm-hmm.
I think we've been warned about it. I don't think we quite understand what those warnings really entail.
I agree. Because if you want it to work without having to, okay, it's time to do blah, 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 it's already capable of thinking and having done it already, and you didn't even know it.
When you were watching the skies, during the Cold War, was there ever a point where you felt like the enemy had maybe an edge technologically, or were you always pretty comfortable that the U.S. was ahead?
No, I never did accede to that because I think America is God blessed. I really think that, or we would not have gotten to where we are again as fast as we have,
Mm-hmm.
and nor as thoroughly as we have. I've been really interested the last few days, or about a week now, since President Trump is talking with not only our Russian counterparts, but today I think he had 5 or 6 nation leaders all in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Now, what are they discussing? And how's it going to come out? I don't know. Because the fact that we are so blessed and have so much and the ability for so much, we're not alone. There's some really smart people in Russia especially. And their system of government so far is not controlled by anybody.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know what they're capable of doing. And that's a bit scary.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't know what they're doing, how can you prepare for it? Maybe I shouldn't be concerned about that because he put it here. He can control it. We can't get ahead of him. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm.
But will we stay sufficiently guided that way and keep our intentions and actions sufficiently by what he's taught us that he will continue or can continue? Or are we going to get so far ahead that we'll be behind? And then his choices have to change.
Well, personally, I think that we are definitely headed in that direction of being too far ahead.
I fear you're right.
You know, and I think it's interesting to me. We read the scriptures and they talk about the prophets that come and preach repentance.
Yeah.
I keep on waiting for, I guess, a bigger outcry for repentance because of the trajectory we're currently on. Maybe there are those that are preaching repentance and we're just not listening.
I'm sure that's happening. And I think about myself, did I just do that? I'm pretty sure that was not approved. No, so far as I'm aware, I have not killed anyone. But I told your dad years ago, we were driving up Stratford right there about Burger King and right in that area.
Mm-hmm.
And some old fella comes zinging out from behind Burger King, did not look left nor right on out into Stratford Road, made his turn. And I said, son, when I do something like that, reach over and tap me and ask that I pull over and you take my keys. And I'll go kicking and screaming, but do it, because I don't want to be responsible for killing somebody. Mm-hmm. Now, we can philosophically get into a conversation. Well, maybe he decided that person needed killing. I'm not going there.
Well, hopefully he doesn't use us as the tool to kill the person that needs to be killing, but I know he does that sometimes too.
Doesn't leave him any choice. War is hell. I'm not the first one to say that. But if you think it is not, or if anybody thinks it is not, they either have their head in the sand or are incapable of comprehending what goes on there.
Mm-hmm.
Look at Hitler, and he's not the first. But look what he's planning to do.
Mm-hmm.
Now, was God instrumental in bringing that to an end? Of course he was. Because, yeah, we developed the weapons and so forth. But why? How did we do that? There are too many things out there that happened coincidentally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in coincidence. I really don't. I can't explain a lot of it, and I'll be the first to admit it. But there are too many items that happen, and we don't have an explanation for it. It happened. Mm-hmm. But I don't want to get up on the forgot the term now.
The high horse
Well, that too.
or soapbox.
The soapbox, yeah, that's what I was looking for, and start preaching this because it doesn't it won't do any good. Not that I'm capable of presenting that worthy a conversation or a direction, but there are those who do, and there are those who are close enough to the power sources that they can control them if necessary and make the decision themselves. I don't know, it might be far out, but there's been some far out coincidences too.
Yeah. While you were raising your kids and building a life, how much contemplating on the future did you do, and did you look to it and kind of have an idealistic version of what it would look like?
Oh, I don't think that I've developed intelligence to that point. I think about, but not right down to the nitty gritty of what if. Because I'm sure there are people who are doing that, and I'm sure there are people who are seeing what if and working to counter it. But that and the ability to control it properly, that bothers me. I mean, America is the greatest, in my slim opinion, is the greatest country that has ever been in the forefront of world, not so much domination, but the ability to get to that point. I'm concerned about that. Now, since we are where we are, and the ability to do massive destruction, possibly with that in mind, exists right now. What if President Trump or any national leader has his hands on the power of decision and action, does not tell his cabinet even what he's planning, but work around it and using his cabinet to organize and put in place things that the rest of us or the rest of his cabinet do not realize or do not understand that this is happening. I personally think that Trump is one of the great minds that we have seen in power anywhere in the world. But now, what does that amount to? We won't know. I also think he loves this country and will do or attempt to do everything and anything to maintain her presence. Also, in my opinion, I think that the Lord has placed this country here and given us the leadership and the tools to do that. The trick is, can we do it without losing control? Fortunately, the system of government that the United States employs can do that if these people, including Congress, will pay attention of what's happening. I have felt for years, or feared even for years, what my grandchildren, and where are you?
I'm a grandchild.
I have thought about what you will see in your life. Now, you have children.
Mm-hmm.
We have 26 great grands.
Your oldest one just started college today.
I don't want to get myself into a position of worrying about it. I am in the position of worrying if our leadership, not just governmental, but if our leadership across the board can and will maintain that vigilance that will keep us from falling into that trap. That's what bothers me.
Mm-hmm.
Good is bad, and bad is good.
Have you seen a degradation in the types of leaders that we have over the years? Were there different kinds of leaders, stronger leaders, back when you were in the in the Air Force and growing up, or has it always kind of been this kind of hodgepodge on the line, not sure who's leading things?
Yeah, that I've been concerned about it, but I rarely discuss it because I am concerned about us becoming so worried about that we fail to keep our eye on the target. Now that's not much of an answer. I agree. But and I hate to go party at this point, but the Democratic Party leadership is driving me nuts. I'm sure there are Democrats that say the Republican Party leadership is driving me nuts. But how's it going to work out? I don't know. Or what all do we have to go through in order for it to work out?
Right. What trials, what tribulations, what lessons do we have to learn to right the ship, if it can be righted?
Well, it can, but it has to involve him.
Mm-hmm.
If we think we're going to get by without involving him, we're in deep kimchi. But it could be. But he has told us, and I can't give you chapter and verse, he has said that America will not fall. And I wish I could find that again.
We'll look it up and we'll talk about it next time.
I don't know if I can find it, man.
Well, I'm sure we'll be able to find something. We'll make that our topic of discussion next time, is how we need God in our lives and what we need to do to right the ship. I really enjoyed it. This was a great conversation. I think we filled in some gaps.
Well, I hope so.
Yeah.
I appreciate what you're doing. I've wondered about this. How do I go about doing this? You know, because as I told you earlier, I keep getting these little things in my internet items that I catch. Write your story.
Mm-hmm. Well, I have a 2-mic setup that I haven't. It's in a box still. I haven't pulled it out. That we could set up at your house in Moses Lake, and if you get the inkling to sit down and record with somebody, we can have that set up for you.
Oh, well, goodness. Well, my house in Moses Lake now is Webb and Shauna's house. I debated that thing in my mind. Webb especially has, and several of it, your mom and dad as well, suggested at least some time ago of moving in with them. Matter of fact, your dad, I think, had at least some sketch plans of how he wanted to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to build typically a duplex.
Mm-hmm.
Or that's not typical, realistically what it is, but a house, a home, that this side was the same as that side.
Mm-hmm.
And wanted Mary and I to move in with them. And I thought about that for a little bit. I said, man, I know a little bit about what materials cost today, and I know a little bit about what builders have to. That would be at least $500,000 just to construct. Not add in profit margins and difficulties of this and so forth. And then in the meantime, we all have things in our life. He wound up going in business at 60 plus.
Mm-hmm.
Golly, that is a challenge.
Right.
But I never said it to him because I don't want to discourage anybody from doing things. That's one of the basic things in progress is people doing things that they're afraid to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, if we have those who never try, then where are we?
Risk is necessary for sure.
Yeah, it is. Anyhow, I'm probably over time.
Well, we can talk for forever, but I think we can save some for next time.
Sure.
We're down to one viewer right now, so.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you know who it is, or just something?
The last one to come on was Reese. I don't know if he's hanging on or somebody else is, but.
Well, I don't know if they do.
Well, I'm about to have a coughing fit, so we probably should end it here.
Yeah, I'll run your voice out of town. Huh?
Yeah, and we'll pick up next time.
Okay.
Thanks for all you that listened to part 2. Stay tuned for part 3.